Hey there, Shannon and Meike from Shinebright Coaching, and we are here to talk about job searching during a recession. We got 4 tips for you to give you everything you need to have a successful job search, no matter what's happening in the economy. So welcome, we're glad you're here.
Yeah, and we actually should start off with our own story, Shannon, because we're no strangers to living through recessions and also huge financial meltdowns in the economy. So maybe I'll start with our story, the story of Shinebright. Remember it was 10 years ago that we were thinking about what to do. It was not an actual recession, but the aftermath of the 2008 financial meltdown. And you had just finished your master's of organizational psychology and development at Pepperdine. I was ready to go and rock and roll with my single subject credential and ready to help a lot of kids learn how to speak English. And neither one of us were finding jobs. Remember that?
I do. It was not a fun time.
Yeah.
I think, we wanted to share our story because, at the time, not gonna lie, it felt scary. It felt uncertain. We didn't know, we had these very clear set visions for our future. We had both chosen to go back to school. We thought we knew the path that was in front of us, and life had some other plans in mind. And, now, as you said, 10 years later, we can look back on that period of that recession and the aftermath and what it kind of pushed us towards and be really grateful for it. But in the time, it felt really scary and overwhelming. And so we wanted to kind of start this video by sharing that, hoping that our experience could offer some hope, a glimmer of, light, if you yourself are in a similar situation and feeling overwhelmed or uncertain as you're trying to job search and the economy is starting to slow down a bit for you as well.
Yeah, and I think that there are a lot of parallels between what we went through and what we might be on the eve of with a potential recession in our near future. And the one thing that we always had each other to help each other with was, okay, this is our expectation, and all of a sudden it's shifting. All of a sudden we need to pay attention to what else we could do or what direction we should maybe follow. And that's how we've had, I think, one of our biggest areas of success has been in being flexible and following potential job leads, creating a business, all these different pieces that we were able to really get excited about and follow through on and be open to where it landed us.
Yeah, I think so. And we're going to get into kind of the 4 tips that we want to share with you in terms of how, if you are a job searcher, seeker, and, times are a little tough, or we're in a recession, or the economy is slow and there's less jobs available, what we recommend. But, I think looking back now, we have the gift of, being able to have some perspective, some time and space from when we actually were going through this. And, we have some learnings and some lessons. And now 10 years later, we have a successful business, right? We get to do what we love every single day. We've built this, we've created this came out of necessity, but turned into something incredible and beautiful. And, we're so grateful for how life turned out. And I think, that's one of the things we want to offer to everyone today is, maybe the plans that you thought that you had, right? For Meike and I, she thought she was going to be a teacher. I thought I was going to go into organizational development and do consulting with organizations, and life kind of laughed at us. And, it took a left turn that we weren't expecting, and we had to get scrappy. We had to get creative. We had to think outside the box. And we're not going to say that that was an easy road, or that it, felt like there was no challenges involved in that. But now 10 years later, we can look back and be like, wow, what a gift, what an incredible set of circumstances. And so how can we kind of use our story as a way to, have some hope for you as well? So let's get into it. What are the 4 tips and things you can be thinking of if you are job searching and the economy is slowing down? So first one out of the bat is illustrate your value. So this is all about kind of what our, coaching company really is rooted in, Shinebright Coaching. We are all about helping our clients really understand their unique value, their strengths, what they uniquely bring to the table. And so that's kind of where we'd like to start this. So if you are trying to be a job seeker during a recession, the truth is that there's less opportunities, which means there's more competition for less amount of jobs. And so more so than ever, it is imperative that you are, one, able to identify within yourself, what is your unique value? What do you uniquely bring to the table? What are your strengths? And then the next piece is, how do you communicate that? How are you showing that? So we're going to talk to you a little bit about the different ways you can be illustrating your value to really give you an edge in a more competitive market when the economy is slower and there's less jobs. So what are your thoughts, Meike?
Well, I think that you really kind of drew out what's the most important piece is there still are jobs out there. And just because there is a recession doesn't mean that all companies are going to stop hiring. And so focusing on the positive, that there is opportunity, and then polishing up how you present yourself, getting focused on what your best contributions have recently been and the things that you pride yourself most on are really good starting points to creating that kind of new and updated personal brand, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, start with, you got to do some self-exploration. You got to do some reflecting, right? So if you are new to the working world, maybe you're a recent graduate, this is about, starting to explore, the things in your life where you found some success so far, where you felt confident. And maybe that's been in some extracurricular, maybe that's been in some certain classes, maybe it's in your interpersonal relationships, but it's about mapping out and really starting to understand, where do you feel at your best? Once you have that information, then it's about, how do you highlight that? So the first place you want to highlight that is on a resume. So making sure that when you're writing your resume, that rather you getting stuck in kind of the old model of just listing a bunch of duties, right? Like, I'm organized, I'm detail oriented, all these things that, are pretty general. You want to make sure that you can tell a compelling story as to who you are. And this comes from doing the work of doing some self-exploration. And then you want to make sure that you, on your resume, are, instead of listing duties, you are showing outcomes and illustrating the input that you had to that outcome. So what's an example of kind of how we could showcase a duty versus showing an accomplishment?
Yeah, I mean, people make this mistake all the time. It's a laundry list of what they've done. What recruiters are looking at, and what a person that's interviewing you, who's actually probably going to read the whole resume, they're wanting to see, why was it when you were in that role that there was something special or noteworthy? And so you really want to showcase the outcome of your presence in that role, and obviously the best parts of it, right? So just saying I'm organized doesn't mean anything, but I organized an event that led to $50,000 in contributions. That's very different, right? So there's always this instinct to just laundry list. And that's where spending time self-reflecting, reminding yourself like what your strong points are, but how they've contributed to the success you've had in recent roles and situations, and using that as the template of your experience on your resume.
Yeah, perfect. So let's kind of do 3 versions. So the first is, I'm organized. The second version is, I organized an event that brought in $50,000. I would take it even further, and we could say something like, I created systems and new processes that allowed me to throw an event that exceeded, the previous year's revenue by over $50,000.
Yep.
Right? We can see that as that progresses and you add in more details and you add in more of how you accomplished and then the exact outcome, that people are getting a story of who you are and the value that you bring to the table and the potential that you could bring to a role. So move from duties to accomplishments on a resume, tell the story of who you are and the value. What about LinkedIn?
Well, what I love about LinkedIn and resume work and self-exploration is they're all connected.
Yep.
So all of that hard work and editing and storytelling that you're doing on your resume, you want to definitely reflect on your LinkedIn. But the thing that I see people doing, making huge mistakes, is just copy and pasting.
Yep.
And LinkedIn is not supposed to be just a digital version of your resume. It's supposed to be a living, breathing profile of who you are and how you've been professionally. So you can take all of those things that you were showcasing and find different ways to reflect them on LinkedIn in your About Me section, under your skills, maybe asking for some recommendations from former bosses or previous colleagues. You can also post comments and things in the thread on LinkedIn where people are talking about best practices. You can add your thoughts. These are all things that potential recruiters, hiring managers, they'll go and they'll take a look and they'll snoop around. So that's a really, really easy access point, and you've already done the hard work.
Yeah, and this is a really small detail. So everything you talked about is kind of the meat of a LinkedIn profile that's necessary if you're job seeking, right? You need to have a solid profile. I always tell my clients to make sure you get an updated photo, because it makes a huge difference, right? A good, well-taken photograph where they can see your face and you're smiling and they get a sense of you and your character, and then also changing the background. Again, it's a super small detail, but it shows that you're active, you're participating, you are on LinkedIn, you care about the image that you are presenting to the world. It's also a chance in a very small way to be showcasing a little bit of your personality or style. So I think those are some small tweaks. And then that about section in the LinkedIn profile, like Meike said, is connected to the self-exploration, defining your brand, the resume you're creating, as well as the LinkedIn. They all should have the same thread that runs through them, so that when people are reading your resume, going to your LinkedIn profile, getting on a phone for a quick, informational chat or even an interview, the messaging is clear. Your brand and what you have to bring is defined and easily able to communicate. And, this could also be from an elevator pitch, right? Taking the time to really, in a concise way, talk about the value you bring. So anyways, suffice to say that, yeah, go ahead.
One thing to add there, you just reminded me that I always tell my clients too, when you're looking for a specific role, when you're going after something really focused, you're going to be looking at job descriptions that have some of the same words and phrases about what that job does. So like organization or teamwork and communication, those are broad ones, but more specifically, you can also infuse those same words from the job description into your About Me, and think about not only the story that you're telling, but the audience you're telling it for, and make that connection too. This really helps recruiters find you. This really helps things be simplified, for the hiring managers when they're looking at your LinkedIn. So you can really, really go light on this with a photo, which draws people in, and then there's a lot of depth there when they take a look at it in a more deep way.
Yeah, love it. So wrapping this up, I think, ultimately we're always going to be proponents of defining your value, right? That's the basis of the work that we do with our clients, really helping them understand who they are and what they bring. But to bring it back to a recession and job searching during a recession, there are less jobs. The competition is stiffer. And if you are just one of a sea of applicants and your resume looks the same, there's nothing that defines you or, allows you to stand out from the pack, you are going to get lost in that shuffle. And so defining your value and then effectively communicating it in your resume, on your LinkedIn profile, in networking conversations is how you begin to stand out and really get the attention of recruiters, of hiring managers, of the organizations that you want to be working for. So, okay, what's number 2?
Speaking of networking, we were going to talk a little bit about how networking in a recession can be really, really helpful in your job search. So this is totally true of any job search. Networking is something that's imperative. It's an intricate piece of looking for a new job. But during a recession, the more opportunity that you can learn about, the more that you can get yourself out there, the more that you will be able to know what kind of opportunities are out there. So networking is really important, but we also don't want to exhaust ourselves. We also don't want to feel inauthentic. So a very tailored approach during a recession and during a very focused job search is what we recommend. And what are some of the tips that you share with your clients, Shannon?
Yeah, so I think, a few things. One, I hear from clients a lot. Well, first off, before anything, I haven't met anyone who's like, I love networking. Maybe one or two people in the 10 years we've been coaching. Most people feel squeamish about it or uncomfortable. And I think redefining how you are thinking about networking is the first step, right? It's really about this understanding that networking is actually about building relationships. And ultimately, it's about building relationships with people who are working in similar industries or roles or have similar interests or passions. And so looking at this as a long-term strategy of building up the relationships that are actually going to be reciprocal relationships throughout the length of your career. So starting with a different framework of how you're looking at it. The next thing I would offer when we're thinking about networking is also, I hear, especially from young people, like, I don't know anyone, I don't have a network, and we often are dismissing the people in our life that know people that we don't even know that they know. And so if you're a young person, you're recently college graduate, or, in the beginning of your career, and you don't feel like you know a lot of people, start with friends and family, right? Start with neighbors, start with, first cousins, start with the people that you know, and begin to spread the word of, I'm job searching. Here's some of the things I'm looking for. Here's some of the ideas of things I'm interested in. Do you know anyone who maybe works in this field or has worked in this field or may know someone? And you just never know. The stories we've heard over the years of the connections that have been made just from reaching out and being really intentional about starting conversations with the people that are just already in your life can expand your network tenfold, right? Because your neighbor Joe, guess what? Joe knows 20 more people that you didn't know. And one of Joe's friends knows 20 more people. And so start with friends and family and then kind of go from there is also one of the tips I would share.
Yeah. And I think that's so important for people of all ages and stages, actually. And that reframe at the beginning of networking is the most important part. We all get squeamish, as you said, of thinking about being in a room of strangers, shaking hands, having kind of insincere conversations. Mm-hmm. That's absolutely not what networking is. So starting with friends and family can also be a place where you can start to get some sea legs, start to feel more confident, understand the types of conversations that you're looking to have and how to follow up and all of those different pieces. And then you can expand. And a great place that we always recommend is to your alumni network. So if you're living in a city that's away from the college that you went to, I'm sure you can reach out and find some kind of alumni group in that city that you live in. You can also go on LinkedIn and see if there are alumni groups related to your field of study and obviously your college. And what's really nice here is there's just a common bond right off the bat. And it's a nice, starting point. And this is where people sometimes go, oh, I don't want to reach out to someone on the internet I don't know. And I always love that because, we don't want you to do anything that makes you uncomfortable. But if you go on your LinkedIn and someone says, hey, I went to that school too. I just moved to Los Angeles and I see that you're a graduate of, would you be open to chatting a bit about, the industry you're in? I'm trying to get into entertainment. Would you say no to that? Most often my clients say, no, I wouldn't say no to that. And guess what? That's what people think. Like, people want to be helpers. That's my real belief about humans. And if you have that connection of being in the same, being alumni and having gone to the same school, it's a great opener to meet 20 more people, as you said, Shannon, right? Mm-hmm. And have some nice conversations.
Yeah. And, kind of bringing it back to our story, our whole journey from the inception of the idea into where we are at today is littered with mentors, with networking, with people who opened new doors. And I think this is kind of going back to how we started this conversation. In a recession, maybe the ideas of how you thought your job search was going to go, or the path you thought you were going to take shifts or changes. And in the networking conversations or process, this is where really staying curious, staying open, being able to, whatever comes your way, following, new leads, following new ideas, maybe what you originally thought you were going to go towards isn't looking as viable right now because the economy is a little bit slower, and you start to talk to friends and family, you start to let people know you're looking for a job, and all of a sudden a random conversation occurs, right? And they invite you to volunteer at their company, or they say like, hey, my neighbor actually has an opportunity he was just mentioning to me. And you just never know where those conversations can lead you, what opportunities can come, or what doors can open. So keeping an open mind and getting out of your, just being in front of a computer and applying online all day long, get out, have conversations, be curious, stay open. You never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I love that. And like you mentioned earlier, we have so many stories where we've seen clients have job opportunities open up for them through these conversations in ways that they really couldn't imagine.
Yep.
So keeping an open mind is really important. And the thing that I always like to drive home is keeping that relationship alive. So that's the other thing is, you reach out, you have a good conversation, make sure you follow up with a thank you email, a thank you note if you know the person's address, make sure you're connected on LinkedIn. And LinkedIn also makes this really easy. Birthdays and work anniversaries pop up all the time. And I know it sounds a little bit like contrived, but it's so lovely to be able to just say, hey, I see you've been at your place for 5 years. Congratulations on that. It's just a little touch point to stay connected. And you know what? That person in the future, they might be looking for another opportunity or job too, and they're going to feel comfortable to reach out to you. So these are ways to really nurture those relationships and keep them alive even after you have found your next role.
Yes. Okay. Tip number 3, if you're job searching during a recession, is to continue to build skills. So, again, back to maybe there's less jobs and you really have to stand out from the competition. You really have to define your value. This is a really good time to be taking classes, to be building skill sets, to be getting out of, kind of any sort of rut in terms of, nothing's happening, there's no opportunities. How can you be proactive? What do you have control over? And going out and getting more knowledge, building more skills, and expanding your, repertoire of, what you can offer is a really good use of your time right now and will repay you in tenfold in terms of making your resume look stronger, right? Giving you more knowledge and skills in order to, whatever job you get, start off with more confidence and more experience. What are your thoughts, Meike, in terms of building skills during this time?
Yeah, well, you and I are both big learners. So, really kind of building upon that idea that you're learning something new in a time where your energy might not be as high or you might be feeling a little down. It's a great way to infuse energy into your day-to-day. But the other thing is make sure you're finding the right classes. Make sure you're building the right skills. If you've been in a career trajectory and you're staying on that trajectory, make sure you do some research. What are the things that are unfolding in my field? What are the things that, my manager has if you're a recent college grad? And find out where you can get those same certifications or exposure to those different types of skills. And make sure that it is a very thoughtful and calculated step, because what we do see sometimes is clients signing up for a bunch of stuff or taking on projects and there's no relevance to where they want to go. So that's the big piece, is the learning can be great. And there's so many different ways to do that today between Coursera, LinkedIn, all these different opportunities, but make sure that it's something that really connects to the goal you are achieving in your job search.
Yeah. And I think one other thing I would add to the building skills is volunteering. I know this can be kind of counterintuitive because when we're in a job search, there tends to be like, I got to find a job. That's my, how I need to spend all my time. And I think oftentimes this idea of like going someplace and giving away your time for free, it's like, I can't do that. I need a job. And, I don't want to underplay the importance of getting a job and, how important that is in the bigger scheme of things. But volunteering. So again, back to our story, the way that we started Shinebright was we began to offer to give workshops and to start coaching in schools and in after school programs. And literally we created the opportunities for ourselves. The doors were not opening for us. So we were taking the opportunities, we were building them. We were thinking about what do we have to offer? What do we want to be, contributing, and where could we do that? And so we identified schools and after school programs and started to volunteer our services. And so this is another way to get practice, get experience, again, expand your network, meet new people, and, be getting out of your house, getting out from, behind that computer, getting energized and reminding yourself of, who you are and what you have to offer.
Yeah, I love that. I was thinking about our story too. And just one more piece on that is during a recession, sometimes people make job switches. Shannon and I started off in the directions we told you about, and we ended up coaches sitting in front of you. And so being open to thinking about different career paths and then testing them out through volunteering is a really, really good way to authentically get an understanding of what it might be like to switch into a different field. So volunteering is great to be a resume builder. It's great for a mood lift to get out there and interact with people. It's great to network, but it's also a great way to kind of test the waters for different potential job fields. And I think that during a recession, people get scared and they kind of just are a deer in the headlights. They stop moving, they stop taking action. And that's what I think our biggest message is to you today is you can take action always. You don't have to go in a corner and freeze. You can think of a million different ways to start engaging your network and building skills. And we're just giving you a few of them and hoping to inspire you to try them and start them, but feel empowered. This is a recession, maybe, okay, but you can show up in the way that you want to.
Yeah. And that gets us to our last point, right? This idea of how can you, if you're a job seeker and there is a recession or the economy has slowed down or it feels like there's less jobs available, our last tip for you is stay open-minded. So we've already shared kind of our experience of, how we thought we had a certain path in mind after finishing grad school and the flexibility and adaptability that we put into action that led us to, building our business and creating our coaching practice and being here today. But we want to talk to you and share just a few last tips on how to kind of be in a mindset that, like Meike said, rather than being a victim to the circumstances, allows you to make sure that you are staying empowered, controlling what you can, taking action, and using this time to propel yourself forward rather than getting stuck or staying paralyzed. So what are your thoughts on open-minded and, mindset during a job search?
Well, it's actually the key ingredient, because if your mindset's not there, then, it's very hard to show up and do all the things that we've just talked about doing. But if you keep yourself open and take away the expectations you've had and be open to kind of, we always talk about following the energy. So if you have a conversation where someone suggests, oh, maybe take this class, and you think, oh, I can't afford that class, and you just shut that down, then you're not growing and you're not learning and you're not moving. And as long as you are growing, learning, and moving, you will find a job. I have no doubt in that. When people are really open to understanding that, life is a journey and your career is a journey, and you can definitely not, write your own story in that this is going to happen and then this is going to happen. But we have to show up and say, okay, I'm going to do this and I'm going to set a goal and I'm going to push towards it. And I'm going to be open to seeing how this plays out, but I'm always going to be a strong player in what's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And that idea of your career being a journey, right? I think oftentimes I see clients getting really hyper focused on this next role, and it has to be the perfect role and it has to be this thing. And it can really kind of turn into scarcity thinking. So, if things are slower, if the jobs that you were trying to get are not as available, or there's a lot of competition, you may need to, for a period of time, widen your net of possibilities of what you're willing to do. But this doesn't mean that this is an end point, right? Looking at it as just a step on the journey. Maybe it's a stepping stone to getting your foot into an organization that you like. Maybe it's not the ideal role that you wanted, but you're getting into an organization that you are excited about, and that's just the beginning point. Or maybe it's just getting into an industry. Maybe it's not the ideal role, but it gets you into the industry, right? So being more open-minded about the possibilities, seeing them as just one step, right? We don't live in a time anymore where people get one job and stay there for their whole life. People hold 20 to 25 jobs in a lifetime. That's the norm. And so just looking at this period and this job as one piece of a greater puzzle, and don't put too much expectation, as Meike said, on it having to be perfect or it having to stay to the plan that you originally thought needed it to be, right?
Yeah, no, I think the mindset is the biggest point here. It makes everything else able to be successful. So, you cannot do the networking if you don't have that open-minded mindset. And what I love about the networking that wraps into it is you'll hear other people's stories. You will hear stories like Shannon's and mine when you're networking. Oh, I also was out of a job at this point, or I had a really hard time breaking into this industry. And what I always encourage clients to do is ask people who share those stories with you, what did it feel like? What was your journey like? And they will tell you in some way, shape, or form the same things that we've been telling you. I stuck in there, I tried different things, I talked to people, and I kept at it, right?
Yep.
That's the mindset.
Yeah. Yep. I think that's kind of what we want to leave you with today is things might not be looking the way you imagined them, or they may be turning out a little bit differently, but it doesn't mean that it has to be bad, right? Let's hold open the possibility that it might actually be great, that it might turn out even better than you imagined, right? So here, through defining your value, making sure it's communicated, getting out there, having conversations, building skills, staying in a more positive mindset, being open-minded. These are all ways where you can ride the waves of a recession, take back your power, make sure that you are moving forward and, landing a job and seeing where that will take you next. So, Any last thoughts?
It's a marathon, not a sprint. So remember that with each step you're taking.
All right. Well, thanks for being here. If you like the video, give us a thumbs up and make sure to subscribe to the channel, and we will be back here soon. Take care.
Take care.